Hello. Today's podcast is about a sort of random subject for me. It's about milk because I was caught, my attention was caught by an article about the dairy industry that's facing an existential crisis in California because of yet another regulation. This starts with the left's cultural battle against milk. So let me read you from a recent publication. The publication is called Bioethics Today, and it asks, is the recent effort to glorify whole milk tainted by racism? Now, I happen to know that there have been studies over the years saying that whole milk is very healthy for most children because it has nutrients that growing bodies need. And in fact, it's better than low-fat milk. Kids who grow up drinking whole milk are actually less likely to have obesity. It is true that there are certain cultures that do not absorb milk as well, that have problems. I'm Jewish. I've had problems over the years. I don't like milk. I prefer yogurt. It is a slightly fermented product, but I eat whole milk yogurt. But milk has been a basic part of the human diet for tens of thousands of years. Humans have always looked to animals for milk, whether it's cows or goats or sheep or camels. In the West, we use cows. But that hasn't stopped the crazy people on the left. Let me get back to that bioethics article. So, asks the writer, if there hasn't really been a war on whole milk, then what's going on? Why the sudden vociferous obsession with drinking it? As a student of and writer on the history of science and public health under fascist regimes, I am suspicious. Milk drinking is political. Drinking whole white milk has played a big role in racist and far-right thinking. Fascists have used the beverage as a rallying cry for white supremacy since the days of Il Duce's, Benito Mussolini's public health campaigns in Italy. The Nazis were enamored of whole milk as well. In America, drinking whole milk has for years been a part of alt-right white nationalist messaging in tweets, memes, and videos. And ... White nationalists in the U.S. and Europe note that many people of Northern European descent can digest lactose as adults. They link milk drinking to an evolved or superior trait that other racial groups somewhat lack. Well, I don't know about that crazy thinking, but for years it's understood that milk, because of its calcium, and our milk, because of its added vitamin D, helps children grow up with strong bones. My father, who was raised in an orphanage in Nazi Germany, did not have strong bones, and it bedeviled him his entire life. The malnutrition, the lack of calcium. By old age, he was in chronic pain from arthritis. No milk. So the war on milk is a very leftist thing, and that gets us to California's new packaging regulations, which will especially affect the dairy industry to the point at which it's possible that many milk producers and cheese producers in California will end up going under. So it's a long article in a site called sfgate.com, sfgate.com. The title is California's Dairy Industry Panics Over August Recycling Deadline. So I've highlighted a few portions that I want to read to you, so bear with me as I do this. California's new recycling law is leaving dairy manufacturers panicked that the legislation's fees and mandates could be devastating to their business and could send California's grocery bills even higher. The 2022 law is designed to increase recycling participation and reduce landfill waste in California by making companies responsible for what happens to their products after they're thrown away. That includes charging companies an impact fee for each product they sell and phasing out materials that cannot be adequately reused, recycled, or composted. Now, a couple of things about this. The only industry where I'd really like to see a company responsible for what happens after it's sold its product is academia, because it's handing out useless degrees in all sorts of studies, and we taxpayers are funding guaranteed student loans that we taxpayers end up paying after the queer women's gender Black studies major can't even get a job as a barista because the it person is so utterly incompetent. I'd really like to see Harvard foot the bill for that failure. As for the dairy industry, not so much. So one point is that maybe I'm a troglodyte, but many, many years ago, I saw a Penn and Teller video from their old show, BS. It was the full name. And one of the things they attacked was recycling, the mania for recycling. They showed how people could be inveigled into having 6 or 7 or 8 recycling cans in front of their houses. In my neighborhood, we are supposed to put out plastic recycling. I don't, because a little investigation revealed that none of it's getting recycled. It's just going into the same landfill. But the local representative assured me that it made people feel better. It didn't make me feel better. It made me feel abused. So we don't recycle in my family. We just nicely get everything ready for the regular landfill. I don't have a problem with landfill. Modern landfills are exceptionally well lined and well protected against leakage. And frankly, I don't care whether there's a pile of rocks and dirt under my feet or a pile of carefully processed and covered up and wrapped and neutralized garbage. But maybe that's just me. Getting back to this crazy California scheme to put onto manufacturers the responsibility for landfill. And I will admit that sometimes we go a little crazy with packaging, usually because people are concerned about disease. I haven't forgotten the Tylenol poisoning in the 1970s. Back to the article. The dairy industry is particularly concerned because its products are required to use packaging that does not currently meet the law's targets. In other words, the dairy industry is caught between 2 prongs. On the one hand, it must use certain packaging for safety reasons, and on the other hand, California is going to fine it for using the same packaging. Back to the article. Katie Davey, the executive director of the Dairy Institute of California, said companies are facing impact fees as high as $15 million and will be forced to either charge customers more or shut down entirely. I'm sure that people in the California legislature and in the various green companies are very happy to see the white supremacist dairy companies go under, even though products such as yogurt and cheeses are not difficult for the lactose intolerance to eat, so there is no racism problem. Picking up again with the essay, proponents say that the current system allows manufacturers and packaged goods companies to create excessive waste without paying for it, offloading these costs to taxpayers as millions of tons of waste ends up in California landfills every year. As I've mentioned, I'm not too worried about landfills. State Senator Ben Allen, who proposed the law, said in a June news release that the law actually protects consumers by forcing companies to pay for their waste. So there you have it. It protects consumers to make an essential dietary food too expensive for consumers to afford. There is how the left thinks. And it's a long article, again, at sfgate.com, but there's one other part of it I want to read to you because it's that good. Danielle Quist, the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Counsel at the International Dairy Foods Association, said the law's source reduction requirements, which require companies to reduce their overall use of plastics by 25% over the next decade, will be extremely challenging for manufacturers. Quist said packaged cheese, which currently comes in flexible plastic film that is not recyclable, would be entirely outlawed by the law come 2032, when all packaging needs to be recyclable, yet there's currently no alternative. You may not be able to sell cheese. Cheese has to be in a flexible film, Quist said. She later added, dairy packaging is there to protect consumers, and it's there for food safety reasons, and the requirements of this law do not take into account the food safety needs. I was also wondering, who is the guy who came up with this law, and he was everything you might imagine. Here is what Brave's search engine comes up with about him. Benjamin Allen is a Democratic member of the California State Senate representing District 24, a West Side and South Bay Los Angeles County district. He has held since 2022. Born in 78 in Santa Monica, Alan is an attorney and former Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board President who holds, get this, degrees from Harvard University, the University of Cambridge, and UC Berkeley. In other words, he is the classic limousine liberal who's very concerned with the environment and really not concerned with the people who live in the environment. I'll leave you with one last thought, which is often when I hear young people talk about not having children because they're going to protect the environment, I will ask them this question: who are you protecting the environment for? Only humans recognize the value of the earth. Either you have non-sentient things like rocks, or you have animals that do not exist in an existential world where we look at our reality and think about it. The only thing that adds value to the planet on which we live is humankind, and their goal is to create a perfect planet on which no humans exist. And on that cheerful thought, because I always leave you on a cheerful thought, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back sooner rather than later with one of these new short videos.